Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Lost Signals Reviews Television and Film, or Film and Television, however you want to say it. It's been about 48 days later from when the quarantine started. And in honor of one of our defining moments of our generation, we decided to do a Make May Plague Month.
Make May virus again.
Yes. So we are starting off with the film 28 Days Later. I am your rage, even without the plague, infected Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Thurlow.
Just trying to survive here, man.
Christopher Morgan.
Enraged.
And Stephen Ramosi.
Trying to avoid looking up at crows.
I was going to take that. Nice.
All right. So I did have a funny log line. I'm trying to remember what it was now, though.
It was very British.
I remember that we could do Zombie Apocalypse Now for the ending. Do you remember what the original one was?
No.
All right. Anyway.
But there is a shot in the film that lends itself to that log line.
Chris, continue with the plot.
Well, I'm going to steal the log line you threw out before, where it's Scarecrow versus the 10th Doctor.
That was there it is. Yep.
So the story begins. Well, some animal activists try to rescue some monkeys from a laboratory, and the monkeys are contaminated with this rage virus that for some reason acts like once you're scratched and infected from 10 to 20 seconds before you become a full-fledged infected person and you go off and kill people. This film picks up 28 days later, where Jim wakes up from, I guess he was in a coma from a car accident he was in. Spends some time wandering around, wondering what the fuck. He's being chased by some infected. Runs into almost literally this woman, Selena, and her friend. They save his ass. They go to his parents' house. He lights a candle and gets the other guy killed, which is why I didn't even bother to pick his name. Selena and Jim find in an apartment building a guy played by Brendan Gleeson and his daughter, Hannah. And they get a message from a military camp, and they take their taxi, escape London, loot a store, get 3 bottles of Lagavulin 16.
4.
Very important.
And then Brendan Gleeson gets infected because he startles a crow who is eating one of somebody, I guess, who was infected and died, and he gets it in his eye. And then he gets shot by some military people, and then they go to a military a mansion that the military has taken over, and it's run by Christopher Eccleston, a.k.a. the 10th Doctor. Insanity ensues.
Set the timeline right.
Huh?
Setting the timeline correctly. Go on.
Exactly. Well, so insanity ensues. The military guys die. Jim gets shot. They go, and Jim is saved from his bullet wound. And they see they put a hello sign out there, and the jets fly over. And just to let you know that there are people out there that have survived it. The infected.
Sorry, Chris. It's very heavily implied that only England is affected by this.
No, it's not.
Well, I'm gonna
say that New York. Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
All right, I'm gonna get to that in 1 second. I am.
Okay.
I'm doing my best not to give a play-by-play. I'm actually trying to break my Chris Morgan discusses a novella when trying to do the plot. Anyway, somewhat happy ending. I have a couple issues with the film before I give my score. Number one, to the point of Selena at one point saying there are cases that broke out in New York and Paris.
Oh.
And then this is after we established that for some reason the virus completely infects and takes hold within, in under a minute. So to me, it's just like without that kind of incubation period, how the fuck did it get, anywhere else? I mean, unless, one of these ran aboard a freighter or, so that's one little problem I have with the film. I'm willing to overlook it, but I have to be quite honest with you. I hate the third act of this film. I just don't buy the bullshit that they're throwing with Christopher Eccleston's group. I think it is. It's the problem Danny Boyle had with Sunshine. The situation wasn't dire enough. He had to create, some kind of left field antagonist to come in. Mm-hmm. After 6 weeks, we're hearing a lot of people whining about, quarantine. But that's a far cry from everybody going fucking feral and wanting to rape a teenager and a woman. I did not buy the end. I hated the third act. I like when you could jump to the ending. To be quite honest with you, the third act came and we just put the subtitles on and we're like shredding documents because we were trying to clean up the house. So I'm going to give this a flat 2. It's not going to be a strong 2. It's just going to be a 2. That's it. Otherwise, I think a fairly solid film. And the other problem I had is, and I guess we'll get to that in theme. So I'll come back to that. What I was about to say in a minute.
I agree with you. I liked the points when Jim was using stealth, in a sense, to take down the army and allowing the rage-infected humans to do his dirty work.
To cause chaos for him.
It did feel sort of out of place that he became Captain Willard for a while. And I don't know. It did, and you're right. It does feel. This is such a perfectly paced horror film up until the right military enters. And then it seems that it kind of almost shifts genres a little, or it turns into a different style of horror film after that.
Yes,
which doesn't. So I agree with you, Chris, in a lot of senses that I think that the third act is the weakest of those because all of a sudden Jim becomes superhuman and the pacing switches.
Yeah, I honestly I agree with you, Ian, more than Chris, I guess. Like, I don't mind the man is the real monster message that happens in the third act. I think that and to be honest, like when the stakes here in America are like, can you stay inside for a few weeks? People are bringing guns to state houses. You think that if this thing ravaged everybody that soldiers, like, people brought up in kind of a violent context, ravaged them, that there wouldn't be this kind of thing happening. You're out of your mind. It happened in Vietnam, and that was just.
It happened in every single war ever.
It happens in every war. Like,
American
exactly.
war.
In fact,
I think that's the entire point, is like this condemnation of the military and how this is what happens when they run into something.
And Steve, to buttress your point here, the first real hint that they want to use women comes after a battle scene. They're coming down from that high and the adrenaline rush of the fight, and then they start getting a little bit rapey.
Yeah, I think that you make a good point, though, Ian. The fact that Jim becomes this like killing machine at some point is kind of out of left field.
Yeah,
that was weird to me to an extent. But I loved it, of course. Like, especially when the first time I saw this movie when I was like a teenager.
Cool, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like, it's like, awesome. Like, this is just a power fantasy, basically. But like, do I believe that this guy who like woke up from a coma a week ago would be able to, like kill a fucking house full of military
who's been living
soldiers?
on a diet of soda and candy bars?
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I like that. I like they explain that. Like, that was one of the things is like when he has a headache, Selena's like, look, you've got no fat and you've been living on sugar. Of course you're going to have this fucking killer.
Yeah,
like
it's
I'm
a nice
saying,
touch.
Like I'm saying, it's, well, we'll get to the man versus whatever real enemy when we get there. But my whole point is, I don't think it was whatever the ending was supposed to be, whatever, cut off from their military, the adrenaline high, fine. I just think it was executed pretty badly. This is my basic.
That's fine. That's a perfectly valid point. I think that I'm going to give it a 2 as well. I think that I'm going to take the point away for the unrealistic portrayal of some guy that just woke up from a coma and has been eating candy for a week, taking out a platoon of highly trained soldiers, as opposed to I'm not surprised at all, or I think that the message in the third act is kind of like looking at the military with this point of view of like, oh, some horrible shit is done in these horrible circumstances by the military all the time. Like this happens every time there's a war.
Whether or not it's a fucking zombie.
If he continued to play the role of the saboteur, like basically leading the rage monsters in, that would be more believable. And those moments where he does that, like for instance, when he runs through the one soldier, it's like, I'm out of bullets, help me, and he's just like, nope, leads through the window.
Yeah.
That is a very believable scenario
Moment.
Or him just stabbing the guy as he appears behind him, like those moments. But him ambushing trained soldiers didn't work for me.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, I guess taking a cue from Chris recently, like, if I could give it a 2.5, I probably would.
Mm-hmm.
I remember saying to E, like, when we were watching, like, oh, this holds up really well. I think it is paced pretty fucking spot on. I think, like, there's a very clear act 1, act 2. It clips itself. Like, there's no, like, not a lot of filler to it, but I guess the ending does, like somewhat taper off. Having you guys talked it out a bit.
It's actually punished by, I think, how well the opening of the movie is.
Reverses
that's the whole thing is the first 2 acts, there's no filler. You're absolutely right on that, Scott. There's like no filler.
Yeah, so like maybe just like I will temper it down. I was like, I haven't given out a 3 in a while. And like I was like, oh shit. And I haven't seen 28 Days in a very long time. And actually, like, just I don't know how else to say this, but I kind of prefer 28 Weeks, even though like on paper, I think 28 Days is a better film in a sense. But now that we just talked it out, my friends, I think I'm going to give it a strong 2, but just not quite enough for a 3 for the very same reasons, for the very same like little points that you guys mentioned. So
now,
yeah, I think it lies about there.
There is an alternate. Actually, there's multiple alternate endings to this, but the original intent was for Jim to die at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of agree with the screening audiences that it would have been super bleak, especially after his superhuman effort, to have him die at the end.
Yeah, that would just be creating
it's too
drama
much
for
of a
drama's
juxtaposition, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen that one, so I don't know how I would like it, but I kind of prefer this one, especially because I love 20. Like in hindsight, I love 28 Weeks Later as well. As much as I like this, I think I saw this movie in high school. What year did it come out?
2004, I think, or 02. It's a long time ago.
2002.
02.
Yeah.
So right after high school.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing this in the theater and being kind of like blown away by it. And then,
so, I mean, you give it credit for like what it did for the the research of zombie films, but go on.
Well, like that's the thing. Like you never seen Fast Zombies before this, right? Like you've never seen that type of thing.
Return of the Living Dead, 1986, man.
Okay, well,
that's what I'm saying. Like I wasn't sure
right.
like where it lies in terms of like doing that trope, like or like subverting the old like traditional zombie trope is all.
I am 100% positive that I had not seen Return of the Living Dead before this, so I hadn't seen Fast Zombies before this, and like it's a really interesting take on what all that I had seen before this was like slow zombies, and it makes the plot, like now that we're talking about plot, it makes the plot like move so much to see like that kind of tension happen. It makes scenes like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying.
The tension is ramped up so much because they could be coming in any minute. It's not like you're waiting for this like zombie to come across the field. It's running at you,
Well, let's delve into semantics for a second, because these aren't the living dead, they're infected. Whereas opposed to like
they're not
lumbering
they're
zombies.
not zombies. They're not like bodies return from the dead. There's a literal like virus. Is the whole point of what we're doing this
What
for.
I like is the trade-off between, and this is probably a style thing, trade-off between their speed, but their durability has decreased. Because they're human still. So a couple of gunshots to the torso.
I love that too. The idea that they can starve to death is amazing. Like, I love that. They introduced that in this.
Yeah, you don't like. Sorry, Sivo. We mentioned this to E. I was like, you don't have to headshot them again. Like as he just mentioned, couple bullets to the center mass, boom, that'll put them down.
Exactly. If we're talking semantics, Chris,
yeah,
zombie is not a term for the living dead, or not a term for like the Romero zombies before.
No. But my point was, you said lumbering zombies versus running zombies, and I was making the distinction between the living dead and these infected. That's all.
Sure.
That's the
right.
That's
right.
that's the point I was making.
That's fine. Like zombie is kind of like just a general term to me, right?
Well, if we want to get into semantics, it actually refers to like hoodoo rituals.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, White Zombie is one of the first zombie movies, and that has nothing to do with the living dead. Like, it's
sure. But I'm saying, like, I think you guys convinced me. Like, on the heels of literally, like, when the film ended, I was like, you know what? Pot holds up. Like, the tension is ramped up, like, kept up throughout, which I may ship into style probably, but strong 2. I dialed myself down back from a 3. So,
well, keep talking with themes.
All right. So, one of you mentioned like, is it that, or is man's inhumanity to man, which certainly comes through in the third act. Yes. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, what is this movie trying to say? Like, humanity can still get through such a scenario, I guess. I don't want to say outright that like it has no themes, because I don't think that's the case. I think it's good enough for a 1, but like I'm struggling to.
Wait till you hear mine.
All right, I'm somewhat articulated because again, maybe like I've been tempered like because of the gap between after the film ended and like just bullshitting and then starting our episode up. But I think it's strong enough for a 1. But what is the actual thematic message? Like, humanity can come together. Like the military is always going to be like an asshole like, in these situations. Like, I know it seems humorous and like flippant, but I still think the film addresses that stuff to a solid to decent degree. So I don't think it's bereft of a theme at all, or like many like a number of myriad thematic elements. But with that, I'm leaning towards an okay soft 1, but goody.
It's a really deep theme. It's about the ineffectuality of current environmental policy, specifically like nonprofit groups, like because we start off with a
PETA XD, essentially.
We're breaking out these rage-infected monkeys, I think, causing the apocalypse. But it does show that nature is better, like we see with the coronavirus. Nature, in fact, the Earth is better off without humans. So we should embrace a grand scale destruction for the benefit of the Earth. That sergeant says it. We're just a blink in the eye of the Earth, and normality would be going back to a time
without
prior to
us.
humans. Yes, I think that's what Danny Boyle's trying to say.
I don't know if that's what he's trying to say. I think that's certainly part of the argument back. I think he is having like this argument back and forth between the two.
There's the tension of it.
Between the two sides, right? There's this idea of like the drive for survival of man, like humans, and this really strong need to continue on, even if it seems like there's nothing to actually survive for, right? Like then there's, as you said, there's this idea of like, well, this is just the world trying to like beat us back a little bit or something like that, like
nature reclaiming itself.
Right. So I think there are like several different points of contention in here that
It's good.
I don't know if Danny Boyle, Alex Garland wrote the script. So like, I think the script is trying to present like a bunch of different points of contention as far as that goes. And I think all of them are interesting. I think that, I don't know if Garland wrote the second one as well, 28 Weeks Later, but I think it goes into that even more so in that movie, but or not more so than this one, but like it continues the thread in that movie as well. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to give it a 0 before Ian spoke, because the whole thing about man is the ultimate end, whatever, man's the enemy, because the whole point with the first 3 Romero films is the zombies were the setting, and was the characters that created the drama, the antagonists, the protagonists. And when you're talking about the military, it was handled so much better in Day of the Dead. These themes were handled much better. The ones that Scott was talking about, the ones you were talking about, were handled a lot better in those films. And listen, it's part of the genre. It opens itself up to comparison. However, I forgot about what Christopher Eccleston said. And given what we're seeing now, and that our little Robin outside, just her eggs hatched, I do kind of like that the failure of our infrastructure, has caused its demise, and ultimately, when we're not around, nature survives. I like that theme, Ian, and because of that, I'm going to give it a 1.
Quick thing, it wasn't Eccleston; it was the sergeant or whatever that said that
when they're at dinner, but like whatever. Like I get what you mean.
But for Jim to survive this film, he has to give into his more bestial nature. And he has to become almost where people confuse him as one of the monsters, the rage monsters.
I think that's a good justification.
So again, it goes back to that. Like, I think there is an environmentalist theme here, even though it is easy to look at the first scene and think that they're attacking.
It seems like a surface like combination of it. Yeah, I think you guys are like collectively. Again, like I was coming into it with a 1 anyways, but I think there's more nuance to be found, and I think that is a credit to the film, to Danny Boyle and Steve, what was his name? The screenwriter?
Alex Garland.
Sure, like Alex Garland, like I have to give them credit now, having talked it out, that maybe a stronger one even than initially, but certainly I think this film has something to say and makes you think about it. It's not just zombies for the sake of zombies, I guess.
So Alex Garland is an interesting writer. He did the Beach, the novel, The Beach.
Yeah, I remember.
He also did Ex Machina, Annihilation.
I would actually, having seen Ex Machina, I would suggest that he does have a deeper theme intended.
He's got something 100%.
Ex Machina and Annihilation's basically sold.
Yeah. So I did want to bring up one other thing that Eccleston did say right after that speech was made about how after humanity is gone, it'll
nature reclaiming.
Eccleston says after that, like, this is normal or something like that. He's like, all I see now is people killing people, and that's all I saw before.
Before that,
as like a commander of his crew in the military, that's how he views the world. Whereas his subordinate sees it in a different, almost naturalistic way, right? Like there's all these different points of view that come through in the script, which I think is really fascinating. So I'm going to give it a really strong 1 for theme.
Yeah, I think there's enough there that it definitely deserves a 1. So same thing.
Now, I'm moving on to antagonist. Can the rage monsters be viewed as antagonists because they have no agency? And they antagonize, but they themselves can't
have no agenda.
An act of antagonism, in a sense. Like, there's no motive behind that. So then do I have to suggest that the military is the sole antagonist of this?
Well, I think if I can help you out, I think
I've got another one.
Or environmentalists.
To literally
not environmentalists, but
terrorists.
But I would say science for science's sake, or the idea that they were keeping these disease vectors in cages to study them. I think is perhaps the point of the movie is like an antagonist of the movie. Not that I necessarily agree with that. I think that perhaps these things should be studied, right? But like
they did say, I'm sorry,
I don't
real quick. Sorry, before you go on, they said that like in order to cure this, we have to study the effects of it in like the first opening 10 minutes.
No,
Right.
but they also say that with Eccleston and his captured rage monster.
exactly.
Now, I do have to say that I was very satisfied with the death of Eccleston because he actually had the classic mad scientist destroyed by his own creation.
Mhm.
Although he didn't create it, he was kept.
It's the general same idea.
And I felt it very in keeping with traditional horror storytelling there. But overall, I did feel that the military was the weakest part of this film. So I don't know what I'm going to give it yet. I'm going to pass it on to you guys.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I just want to like elaborate a little bit. Like, I think that the entire idea of the beginning of this movie is like, man is the originator of its own demise, right? Like we are gonna be the cause of our own demise, and like that's the entire point of it. Is like there's these two like, warring parts of humanity, right? The animal rights activists and the scientists.
Steve-O, duality of man, sir. The what? Duality of man, of course.
The duality of man. But yeah, like I think that's kind of the idea. Is like we are going to create our own demise at some point because we think that it's this idea that's been around since we did those Universal monster movies.
Sure.
And it's like the idea that science will destroy us, right? Like to some degree.
About right.
Hey, perhaps.
I don't know. What do you think, Chris? Because I'm still on the fence. So, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to give it a 0 because I don't. If we're going to go with the military, it seems very contrived. I really would like. I think it would have been better man versus nature if we had kept the core group and had the military just be one more obstacle they had to face and overcome as a group. Because I love
that, but not to the extent that
I love their humanity. But the thing is, I was more concerned with the rage monsters, the infected, but they were just, like I said, they're part of the environment. And again, the whole thing comes apart in the third act for me. And I don't buy the military as an antagonist. They seem contrived. And at that point in time, the infected just take a back seat. They become part of the setting.
Yeah.
So I no longer see the man versus nature. I just the ending. Listen, Ex Machina and Annihilation are great movies. So however Alex Garland grew after this was just, credit to him. But I don't think all the dots connected here.
In this instance,
I just don't feel the dots connected.
Yeah, I think you might have convinced me. I think I might get on board with that. Like, it's not weak, it's not terrible, but I think there's not enough there. And like maybe it's the point to disperse in other questions, like either plot and/or themes, and maybe even style. But for the antagonist question, I think I'm going to come down on an official 0. Yeah.
Steven, what's your score?
I am going to give this. I'm going to give it a 0 as well. Just because what I mentioned about
the way they handled it,
the duality of man, I guess, if we're calling it that, really only comes through at the beginning.
Sure.
And the end, the military, as you guys mentioned, I agree, it is the weakest part of the film. So I'll give it a 0.
All
Well,
right, Steve-O, can you talking about Jim?
Who the fuck is Jim?
Cillian Murphy does a great job in this role. I think that this is his first like big one.
Breakout role.
Remember him?
I'll put him on the map for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he does
some indie work in Ireland before this.
Yeah. I think he does a phenomenal job as Jim in this. His chemistry with all of the cast, and especially Selena, but like Frank and Hannah when they're around as well, is really good. He does turn into like a fucking Rambo at the end, but like that's
to a small
fine.
degree, but I certainly get what you mean.
That's fine. It's
Jim
not
Rambo.
Jim Rambo.
Jimbo. Go on.
I think he does this. I think Cillian Murphy himself does a solid job, and I think the character's written fairly well in terms of his interactions with the rest of the characters. And I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'll follow up. Not too much, but I think it's a good arc. Now, yes, like maybe it gets like a little over the top, like you said, like a little Captain Willard-esque, I guess, in a sense. So, like, not that I don't mind that, but also like it doesn't break, but it strains the believability that they've built up so much throughout the rest of the film, right? So
there's a great work I read. I forget who did it, so I apologize. Is that when you're dealing with fantastical things, there is a
threshold.
There's a threshold of believability that you have, and movies can only pull that off once. It was actually about Wanted back in the day.
Okay.
But the idea is that you have to believe that someone can bend bullets,
Curve a bullet,
which you're willing to, and then you have to then be told that to believe that a loom is predicting everything that happens. And they're like, no, that's too much of an extension of belief. Suspension of disbelief. And I feel that this one works that way. We have to suspend our disbelief to allow for rage monsters, and then we have to suspend our disbelief that Jim is Rambo.
At the end, yeah, like I don't know, man. Like,
see,
that's my academic analysis.
The third act fucks up. I mean, because
right, like,
because before that, I mean, you've got this wonderful character growth with Selena, where she's like every man for himself. I'd kill you in a second, and then she's humbled when there's unity. And you've got Jim, and there's one part where he kills the infected child in the burger shop. I mean, and this comes like a day or two after he got the other guy killed by lighting a candle. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this guy's an idiot, and Beth's like, no, he just needs to exercise his own rage towards something. So like, but as you said, Ian, you get to the third act where he becomes Rambo. And all of a sudden that becomes undone, and then you skip to the very end, and all the humanity returns. It's just like there's like this, well, like Selena and Hannah, and I guess we'll get to this later, stay consistent, but he kind of has this weird little thing going on.
No, I agree. Like it's like 85% of a complete arc, and then like it like not aborts, but like takes a very hard left turn where like it doesn't actually like it doesn't all mesh completely well. But I'm saying 85% is good enough, I think, to give him a 1.
No, I'm likely going to give him a 1 as well, even though there is that one blip.
I agree.
Faults.
And Cillian is a good actor. Like I've liked him in almost anything I've seen him since, and so forth. So
is that 1's all around for protagonist?
Yeah,
I think so.
1's all about.
Chris, talk about the supporting cast.
These supporting characters I was actually trying to look up the Hannah's father's name. What's his name again?
Frank film. I have no idea what the actor's name is.
No, it was
Brendan Gleeson. Frank is his name.
Frank, that's it. I really, really thought those 3 characters really complemented Jim well. I think they complemented one another well. You really had, and Hannah.
It's a good dynamic, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Hannah was like the realist idealist. And her dad was more of an idealist fatalist. Jim was still trying to figure out what was going on. Selena's more of a nihilistic fatalist.
Pragmatic,
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to go. I was going to say she bypassed.
No, nihilist is good too. Yeah, for sure.
22 days ago.
She opens her heart and gets it broken again. And it's actually one of the more tragic arcs I've seen in the character.
I mean, to the credit,
it's more than a second.
I'm going to say to as much as I don't like the third act, the scene where she's trying to give the pills to Hannah, preparing for the rape, she goes, "Are you trying to kill me?" She goes, "No, I'm trying to make you not care."
Yeah. I mean that's an impactful line. It's almost like dropped in there, but if you think about it, you're right, Chris. Like it's pretty like weighty.
But that goes exactly to what Ian was saying about she opens her heart and then gets it broken, and then she's got to become that realist again. And now she's got it. Now she's kind of a caregiver in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like you're right. Like while the secondary cast isn't huge, but I think that works in favor and credit of the film. They keep it like nice and like concise and tight, and like I think they draw out the secondary characters well enough for sure to like give them like you're right. It's a good juxtaposition between Jim like fish out of water, like what the fuck is going on, figuring out the zombie, quote unquote, zombie apocalypse, running into Selena and her friend, who then Jim inadvertently, like, accidentally gets killed because he doesn't know what's going on still, then running into Hannah and Frank, and then them teaming up, and then running into the military. Even if, like, it doesn't work all the way through, I think the secondary characters do contribute a lot to the world building and to the just the setting in general, that I'm going to give them a 1.
Yeah, Selena, Frank, Hannah. Selena and Hannah have pretty strong arcs.
Yeah.
Frank has his own arc as well. I think that they're all great characters. They're basically the only secondary characters that matter. Like, all the
military
soldiers
guys are just
are really one-dimensional,
Yeah.
but that's fine. Like, that's what they're there for. They're basically there to be
that
secondary antagonists.
It's
almost.
actually surprising how, even for their minimal development, that they do have
It's
that
still
each of them
decent.
kind of has their own personality type. You have the cowards, you have the
Oh yeah.
because I've seen many depictions of soldiers where they're all just kind of the blank face soldier, and this they actually have.
They have flashes of personality, even if the film doesn't give them that much time to do it, but it still works. Even.
They do. They all have their own personality. They don't develop, but they do have their own personality, and like they're good for their like trope that they're filling, that each one is filling. That they all are important to this overall sense of, like, we want to describe the military in as few words as possible type thing. They all have kind of a role to play in terms of, like, what kind of characters come out of the military, right? You have, like, the I forget what he, like, the sergeant, the guy that gets killed because he's a dissenter, almost is like, you're almost like Kurt Vonnegut type guy, and like
he's like the most moralistic member of the troop. And then
I was going to say the fact that you're like the guy.
Yeah.
Says
Exactly.
Says the depth of character.
Exactly. So, like, they all have their very strong own characters, and I do agree with that. So I'm going to give supporting actually a really strong one. For those one-dimensional characters, they are all, like, solidly in their place, and for the other characters,
even more so,
Selena, Frank, Hannah, they all develop as people throughout the movie. So that's, like, that is really important to me in terms of supporting characters, seeing that development, and I got to give it credit for that.
I do have one last thing to say, that I've seen this film before, but never before have I felt more kin to a character as Frank, because I feel like I would handle the zombie apocalypse and the apocalypse in general just like Frank, and get killed yelling at birds, which would make sense to my character as well.
You've come so far, and then, like, a random happenstance thing kills you. Sure.
All right, Scott, talk about dialogue.
All right, so this also one is, like, I was somewhat wavering, but I think overall, again, like, going back to my mathematical breakdown that I just said, 80% of it works. Like, there's nothing cringeworthy. I think the interactions are quite well parsed out and realistic and make sense. Nothing is like what? Why would this character say this to the other character, right? Like, I don't know. Like, anything that seems inconsistent is extremely few and far between to me. So while not, it's like, oh man, it's not fucking like Tarantino dialogue or anything like that. Like, it still works. And it matches the tension going back to the plot. So I really, beyond that, I think I'm going to give it a solid 1 because of that reason. I can't really, like, point out any, in this instance, in this scene didn't work, etc., right? So that's my argument for giving it a pretty solid 1, and the script, like, carries it along pretty damn well. So what do you boys think?
I was going to say the dialogue, there's nothing unobtrusive in it. It's pretty natural.
That's what I wanted to say. God damn it, Chris. Yeah, good call.
But I'm going to stop bashing on the things I don't like about the third act, because the things I do like about the third act, the dialogue that I liked about the things I liked about the third act was elevated by the dialogue.
Right.
With what Selena said, the way she said it to Hannah, what Frank said. I mean, it's just, and even to the certain point until everybody went crazy, certain things that Eccleston's character said and the other soldier said, I like I said, it's functional dialogue that's
It's more
got some
consistent
really
than it
great
isn't.
lines.
Eccleston is a good actor, and
He's great.
And the dialogue for that somewhat was exposition, but he had a lot of pathos. You understood his motivations through the dialogue.
Good point. Yeah.
For why he was being a monster was, I need to keep my family unit together, even though it requires me
Doing
sacrificing
dark things.
women for their pleasure. But again, you understand his desire to keep, like when he goes, when the one soldier's dying on the ground, holding his hand and like saying it's gonna be like okay, all that. Again, hard military man, but it worked for me. Like,
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the dialogue's pretty great in this. I actually like the dialogue a lot in this movie. It is somewhat sparse when it needs to be sparse.
Yeah. Well,
And it really, but there's, I don't think there's a lot wasted in terms of dialogue. Yeah, there's a little bit of exposition for sure, but like, I think it's
not
important
overbearing.
that it's there. Yeah. And I don't have much more to say. I'm going to give the dialogue one.
Yeah, I think it's a damn solid, like perfectly fine one.
all right. And also the callback to, I believe, what was it, Day of the Dead, when there's hello.
Yeah, yeah.
But
is there anybody? Hello, is anyone
Hello.
there? Right, Chris? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about style. I think one of especially for 2002, it's been 18 years
fucking
since
years, Jesus
this
Christ.
came out. It still holds up fairly well. The kind of tilted camera look was great.
Dutch angle.
The Dutch angle. The soundtrack was very well done. And we mentioned it before.
Yeah.
The pacing, especially for the first 2/3 of this film, is perhaps one of the best. You actually
tuned.
The idea of the narrative sine wave that goes into this, where it starts off bleak, you get hope, they start building hope, and then cuts it off at the perfect moment. Overall, I think that 2/3 of this is a masterpiece stylistically. Then it kind of goes off the rail, but it's still decent, and the special effects are good, and the rage monsters are terrifying.
Visceral.
And the desolate landscapes are phenomenal too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, one thing I noticed, like, this time is like, like the weird, like, off kilter angles, like, add a lot to the tension for sure. So, like, that ties into plot in a sense. And yeah, like, it's the soundtrack. The opening song, of course, is a Godspeed You Black Emperor song, which kind of got, like, when I first saw this film, it got me into them. And it's sparsely used. Like, if you guys notice or like reflect back, there actually isn't that much like music like attached to many scenes. But when it does happen, it only enhances like the tension and the claustrophobic feeling and all that. So yeah, I think style is one of the strongest, and Danny Boyle like really knew his vision and executed quite well. And I really don't have any complaints. I think style's pretty fucking strong. So strong one.
Two things I want to say about style, because I agree with you, and I especially like the shot of Manchester burning. Number one,
Yeah.
Well, who doesn't?
Everyone loves that, Chris.
Manchester's not that bad of a town. I was there. Don't order the pizza. They always put anchovies
Until
on
it burns down.
They
Until it
always
burns
put
down.
anchovies on it?
I ordered a pepperoni pizza and it came with anchovies. But two things. Number one, that famous shot of Cillian Murphy on the bridge.
On the bridge, yeah.
That is taken right out of Day of the Triffids. I watched Day of the Triffids a couple months ago, and I'm like, holy, that shot that Steve has got behind him, around that shot, I'm watching Day of the Triffids, and I'm like, shit, so much of the cinematography of the
Somebody
opening.
should be sued.
No, I think it's a beautiful homage to it. Don't get me wrong. No, I'm
just busting your balls, but yeah.
This is
it's
a
an amazing
compliment
shot.
to the film. And also, we're recording this on May 1st. May 2nd is my 11th, Beth and Maya's 11th wedding anniversary. And when they were shopping, there's the Granddaddy song, AM 180. We had a string quartet play that. That was our processional. So
After wedding? Yeah. Very nice.
Wow. All right. Nice tie-in.
Man. It all ties the movie together and Chris's marriage together as well.
Style on this movie is, I think, phenomenal. It holds up. The first time I saw this, I was blown away by it. I think it holds up really well 18 years later.
Man.
The zombies are some of the scariest zombies I've seen in a zombie movie. Like you're right. Like those tilted angles, Danny Boyle loves them, and or at least in this movie, love them. And they
use
really
so well. Yeah.
They really add to feeling like off balance. And as you guys mentioned, the sound, like you guys mentioned everything I want to mention, but the soundtrack is phenomenal. Again, like fairly sparse, but like really well used.
Precision striking.
Yeah, I'm going to give Style a strong one, and I don't think I have too much more to say about it.
Chris, I'm just saying you made me nervous back there.
Why?
Chris, because I think a rage monster is about to bust into your room when you do that tilted angle. Yeah, exactly.
All right, and Stephen.
Yes.
Would you recommend this film?
I would, yeah. This is one of my favorite zombie flicks. I'm sure that some of that has to do with having seen it when I was an impressionable youngster.
Sure, when it hit,
when I was an 18-year-old, whatever, scumbag. But
your words,
as opposed to the 40-year-old scumbag. Go on.
Come on, give me some credit. I'm not 40 yet.
Not yet, but anyway.
But
by the time the coronavirus is over, you'll
yeah, that's true. By the time we get out of lockdown over here, but yeah, it's I really enjoyed watching it again. I have seen this. This is probably my fourth time watching it, I would say, and I have not run into a viewing where I didn't enjoy it. So I'm gonna go ahead and recommend it. I think it's a really tense movie. It's gonna keep your attention the whole time, and it's worth a watch.
Yeah, I agree. Not much more to add, but I've seen this one less than I've seen 28 Weeks. And like I said, like I personally maybe prefer that, but I think 28 Days objectively, in whatever like connotation I can say, holds up damn well. And it's the perfect pace. It's like an hour and 58 minutes, like just under 2 hours. It's fucking perfect. And yeah, it still fucking holds up. And we have to give it credit, as we sort of did in Plot opening up, that it sort of was one of the vanguards of the new wave of zombie films, and you have to, again, like respect it for that, for its place in that, and it's still very, very watchable and fucking works. So, yep, I recommend it.
Yeah,
I actually was going to give this a 0 because I really had a hard time watching it again because I don't think, to me, it didn't stand up to multiple viewings. However, as much as I gave some of the as much as I've given some of the things we gave recommends because of their historical context.
Yeah,
2/3 of this movie is goddamn solid. The pacing's great.
Like I said, 85% or so.
But the thing is, that does not diminish the fact that I think this is a worthwhile film to at least see once. Yeah. I probably won't care about seeing it again. But this is a worthwhile film to see once. So I will recommend it.
All right. And I also, for actually very much similar reasons, I think this is historically important for the new wave of zombie films that lasted about a decade until like 2000. Only recently have kind of zombie films petered out. I think The Dead Don't Die was the final death knell.
Ironically, past the death of zombie films.
But that film hurts. No, let's not talk about that.
No, we don't talk about it now, but do go check out our review of that because we did review it. So, anyways.
Yeah, so overall, though, I think this is a fairly well-structured, and if you're stuck at home, it's a good film to watch. It still holds up.
Yeah. So what we got there?
Leaves us with an 8. We all give it 8s.
For the same reasons? Or
right,
same reasons.
Because we
talked each other into and out of all the scores.
Because the third act.
Yeah.
That's really it. Like that.
That's where it somewhat falters.
But it's a very strong movie for the first 2/3, and then it becomes. It's almost damned by its own success.
I like that.
Yeah, but I'll tell you as I said before, I think the redeeming through line through the third act, as flawed as it is, was Hannah and Selena. Those two are really those.
Carried it
I
through.
cannot underline the importance of those two characters more.
Fair enough. All right.
All right.
Solid, though.
Yeah. Well, this has been the Lost Signals reviews, film and television. I am your rage monster, Jonathan Manzer, here with Scott Thurlow,
London Bridge is falling down.
Stephen Ramosi,
Signing out with my great big bushy plague beard.
and Chris Morgan, about to get killed.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or mods?